Okay. Well, we're on, and today is February the 28th. Do we have 29 days in February?
Yes.
29 days. Okay. So, at any rate, here we are. Lesson, and I forgot to put the lesson number up there. You'll just have to guess. It's 79. We have done this 79 times, and I still haven't got it right yet. But we're keeping after it. And today we had to take a side trip because, as you will recall, last week we were studying Revelation chapter 21, which gave us a detailed analysis, well, as detailed as you get in the Bible, about what the New Jerusalem looks like. That's heaven. That's where your home is. Pretty amazing thing. And out of that came some interesting facts, and basically the dimensions of the New Jerusalem are 1,500 miles wide, 1,500 miles length, width, height, 1,500 miles. Yes?
I think you skipped your prayers.
I was going to get there. This is just preamble.
Okay.
So at any rate, as you have correctly pointed out, before we get started, we always open with a word of prayer. Blessed are you, O Lord our God, King of the universe, our creator and maker, and the one in whom we live and move and have our being. We're just thankful for this group that has assembled here to study these amazing things that you've left for us to find through your prophet John. And we just thank you for his witness that gives us such hope and gives us an insight into what that New Jerusalem looks like. And Lord, we look forward to the day when we can see it for real. And so now bless each one, each family that's represented here today. Put your shield of protection around each one of us as we go through this life. And again, Lord, we just look forward to that time when we can see you coming on the clouds of heaven. For we pray this in Christ's name. Amen. Okay. So we're going to review chapter 21, which kind of got this lesson started. And then I got a scripture of the day, sign of the times, and then we'll go into, I bet you $1 to a donut that you have never talked about the Great Pyramid of Giza in any of your Bible studies before. Shame. Revelation chapter 21, that's where we are introduced into a new heaven and a new earth. And in that new heaven, there is a new Jerusalem. And it is it's our home. It's where the bride of Christ is. Which brings up the question, where's everybody else? If our home is there, where's Israel at? Where's everybody else? Where's that great number that serves day and night in the temple? Do they not have a home? Or is their home outside the gates? Lots of questions that are still unresolved. But the one thing we know for sure, that the bride of Christ has a place in the New Jerusalem. And boy, is it a place. 1,500 miles wide, 1,500 miles long, 1,500 miles high. It's either a cube or it could be a pyramid. Now, within the gates of the New Jerusalem, there are only righteous people. And so if you've got some really lousy neighbors, don't worry about it. We got it covered when we get up there. The city has 12 foundations, each one a separate gemstone, and these represent the 12 apostles. Makes sense, doesn't it? The church, basically, we are a result of the work that the apostles did. We are all built upon that foundation. Very, very interesting that the New Jerusalem would have these 12 laminar foundations. And it has 12 gates, made up of a single pearl, never closed, which makes you wonder, why do we got them in the first place? We don't ever close them. I guess they're there for decoration. And then, of course, we've got the dimension, which lead us into our lesson for today. And the city has no temple, no sun nor moon, no source of light except for God, which is its temple and its light. And there is no night there. So this is going to be different and a whole lot better.
Guess that means I won't get tired then?
It didn't talk about a bedroom or a sleeping arrangements or nap time or anything like that. I don't know. This is going to be unusual. got a scripture of the day for you. You are great in counsel and mighty in work, for your eyes are open to all the ways of the sons of men, to give everyone according to his ways and according to the fruit of his doings. You have set signs and wonders in the land of Egypt to this day, and in Israel among other men, and you have made yourself a name as it is to this day. One in Jeremiah, which you don't often hear about, but it brings up a point. There's a wonder somewhere in the land of Egypt. Well, I wonder where that is. Wonder where the wonder is. And then, of course, we've got Psalms 118. The stone which the builders rejected has become the chief, the top, the highest cornerstone. And it's important to understand that a pyramid is the only four-sided geometric structure which has a chief cornerstone. In other words, a single stone that touches all four sides. So it's really not a four-sided, it's actually 5-sided structure. So a pyramid is not four-sided, it's a 5-sided structure, but you've got one place, one single point, one apex. It's like everything is pointing up to this high place. And that would be where the chief cornerstone would be. Yes?
When you say 5 points, do you mean then 4 corners and then the one on top?
Bottom and 4 sides.
Oh, gotcha.
So you've got, all of the sides culminating in a single point. And that point in a pyramid would be called the chief cornerstone. Chief in the sense that it is the highest, it is the most dominant, it brings and touches all 4 sides, brings them all together. So this passage in Psalms 118 is a passage that's read during the Jewish holy day of Sukkot. And Sukkot, of course, as you will remember, is the Feast of Tabernacles. And the Feast of Tabernacles is a Jewish holy day which is a shadow and a type of the millennial reign. It is a type, it's a ceremony which is very much in contrast with Yom Kippur, the ceremony before. Yom Kippur is the most holiest, it's the most, intense of all the Jewish holy days. When if you were a Jew and had access to the temple, if you went there to celebrate Yom Kippur, you went there in your burial clothes, because there's just a chance that high priest might flub the deal when he goes into the Holy of Holies, and if he did, not only will all mankind die, the whole universe will disappear. It's an awesome job. If you were the high priest, you'd got to be scared to death. But that's what they believe. On contrast to that, the Feast of Tabernacles is the happiest day. The Jews say, no man has seen joy until he has seen the Feast of Tabernacles celebration. It is a celebration of literally the rebirth of the Garden of Eden on planet Earth. And so for 1,000 years, we will have literally a new Garden of Eden on planet Earth. Any questions so far? Moving right along. Signs of the times. The U.S. probes 14 new reports of sexually transmitted Zika. The U.S. health authorities are investigating 14 new cases of Zika virus that may have been transmitted sexually, suggesting a larger role than previously considered for the spread of the mosquito-borne virus. Several of the cases involve pregnant women, and the U.S. Center for Disease Control and Prevention warned on Tuesday. The agency reiterated its call for people to use condoms or practice abstinence when living or traveling to more than 20 nations and territories in Latin America and the Caribbean affected by the Zika virus. This thing is going crazy. Which brings to my mind that passage in Matthew 24, for nation will rise against nation, kingdom against kingdom, and there will be famines, pestilences, which means infectious diseases, and earthquakes in varying places. If I have the signs of the times correctly, what we are enduring right now would be called the Braxton Hicks contractions of the birthing process, meaning that the baby's about due. So we are clearly at the end of the age, in my estimation. And of course, that's pretty much what I'm trying to convey by virtue of these lessons is the signs of the times. We ain't got much time left. Now like I said, this pyramid business, that description of the New Jerusalem fits both a cube and a pyramid. And there is reasons to believe that it's probably a pyramid. Now, in the Coptic language, the word pyramid is two words, Eurymidon, which means revelation in measurement. And so wherever you would see a pyramid, you have to kind of reflect back on these Coptic words. By the way, the subject for the day is called pyramidology. And pyramidology is the study of pyramids. But whenever you see that terminology of pyramidology, there's only one pyramid we're talking about. It's not just any pyramid, it's the Pyramid of Giza. And let me point out, before we get too far into this, that there are Egyptologists. Those are people who study things of Egypt. And they are absolutely certain that you normally see the Great Pyramid, there are two others with it. They kind of form a triad. And those three pyramids, the Egyptologists will jump up and down and swear that Khufu built a big one, Chephren built the second largest one, and Menkaure built the third one. And everybody knows that, and don't confuse me with any facts. And we'll go on to the next question. That ain't the truth. Nobody knows who built those great pyramids. And the one fact that stands out among all others is, if you ever go to a city that was built by a pharaoh in Egypt, you will find hieroglyphs from one end to the other, lauding the virtues of that particular pharaoh. I mean, look how great I am, and here's all the campaigns that I won, and the guy builds himself up tremendously. You go to the Great Pyramid of Giza, you won't even find a note in the thing, in hieroglyphics. I say you won't find one. You won't find a legitimate one. Back in 1857, a black sheep by the name of Colonel Howard Weiss, who didn't have anything to do and was trying to make a name for himself, went down to Egypt, and he was going to provide evidence that Khufu built the Great Pyramid. And when we get into it a little bit, you'll find out that there are, above the king's chambers, relieving chambers. There's about 3 or 4 of them, and they were known at the time, and they're suspected to be more up there. So he went in and was tearing up into those chambers, and when the workmen broke into what's called the Wellington's chamber now, he dismissed them all immediately, sent them all home. And then, surprisingly, the next day when they went in there, they find this big insignia of Cheops up there. And everybody said, there it is. We knew Cheops built this thing. Of course, he put his name in one cartouche way up in the top of a chamber, which you can't even get to unless you break into it. It made no sense at all, but the Egyptologists just jumped right on it. The only problem with it is, if you look at the hieroglyphics of antiquity are different from more modern hieroglyphics. And in that cartouche, he mixed hieroglyphics that were 300-400 years apart, that have never been seen mixed together before. And to any person of reason, you're going to immediately say, that's a forgery, of which it was. So if anybody tells you that, oh yeah, that's built by Khufu, no, it wasn't. Nobody knows who it was built by. And if they say and use that Wellington Chamber cartouche as an example, they're wrong. Yes.
Question. The Great Pyramid of Giza, that is that pyramid that everyone thinks of as the Great Pyramid.
It's the
It's
biggest
not
one
another
there.
pyramid that no one's ever seen.
Yeah, there's a lot of them.
Okay. That shows
It's the largest one, and I'm going to give you a few facts about it. It's the biggest structure ever created by man on Earth. And it was alleged to be created by people of antiquity who didn't even have saws or numerically controlled milling machines or anything. They just had hammers and picks, and they went out there, and the base of this pyramid is composed of 2.3 million stones. And each one of the stones is cut out of limestone, and it's cut to optical precision, something we couldn't even do today. And then it's glued together with a mortar that we can't produce today, making the whole pyramid one single monolith. Now, after you put on those 2.3 million stones, they are covered with, and some of them remain today, you can see it kind of up at the very top. There were casing stones put on there, such that the casing stones fit in there at an angle such that the surface was perfectly flat and white. It was made out of polished white limestone. Around the 4th century, an Arab, they literally went out and mined those casing stones off there. And one of the biggest tragedies in vandalism in the history of the world, they mined those casing stones off there and built a mosque out of them. They desecrated one of the most beautiful monuments ever found on the planet just to make a mosque. You can deduce from that as you would like. But the point is, this monument, nobody understands it. They don't understand how it was built. I went to a seminar once in NASA, and they had a NASA engineer. Anybody know what a Gantt chart is? Some people know what a Gantt chart is. Anyway, it's a chart which ties a whole bunch of processes together so that you can kind of understand how you get from point A to point B. And he had
Like a flow chart?
it's similar to a flow chart, but it's a bunch of lines. It looks like organized chaos when you see it on the board. But it's all the activities that are required to produce a process. And so he had a Gantt chart of the production of the Great Pyramid of Giza.
So
And
that's what they did to 1431 and I-35?
yeah, that was somebody had a serious headache when they did that one. So at any rate, the problem with it is he didn't deal with the real issue. He could not explain how you could make a block 50 inches by 50 inches by 28 inches and have it optically accurate on all four sides. He couldn't figure out how you could do that. But if you could do that, and of course Herodotus told us, a big lie, he said that he talked with an Egyptian pharaoh, and the Great Pyramid of Giza was built over a 20-year period by 3 teams of 100,000 men each. The only problem was the guy who was telling Herodotus this was 500 or 600 years removed from the event. How did he know? He didn't know. He was guessing. Yeah.
Already knew about they had taken that polished limestone off of the pyramid, it had vandalized it, but do we know where some of it ended up at?
Oh yeah, the mosque is still there in Egypt.
Okay.
Mhm.
So there's
Yeah, it's in Cairo. Yeah, it's still there, and so you can see this. They ruined it. I mean, they ruined all the stones. But here's some of the interesting facts. I just told you about the stones, how they were cut and glued together. There's 144,000, by the way, of these white polished casing stones. That number 144,000 is interesting. And I'm not going to go over all of the information about the pyramid because we haven't gotten that much time. But the location of the Great Pyramid is exactly at the intersection of the longest land-borne longitude and the longest water-borne latitude in the world. And that kind of makes that point unique. Its location is such that on the spring solstice at noon, the pyramid produces no shadow. It is the most accurately aligned monument in the world, north, south, east, and west. And the only reason it's slightly out of alignment was due to an earthquake. So there are things about this earthquake that make no sense at all. And yet it implies a much higher intelligence involved with its construction. Now, this Great Pyramid is called the Glorious Light by the Egyptians because of this white limestone. Varying times of the day when the sun was shining on it, it glowed like a diamond, it was said. The Hindus first saw it. They called it the Golden Mountain because, you know, you've got that golden colored sand, and I'm sure the light refracting off of it made the thing look golden. So hold that thought. We'll go over that in just a little bit. Now, to those of you who know Josephus, everybody knows Josephus, right? We wouldn't know anything about history without Josephus. Antiquities of the Jew, book 1, chapter 2. Now this Seth, talking about Seth, remember? Adam and Eve, Cain killed Abel, and then they had Seth. Now this Seth, when he was brought up and came to the end of years in which he could discern what was good, became a virtuous man. And he himself was of excellent character, so did he leave children behind who initiated his virtues. All these proved to be of good dispositions. They also inhabited the same country without dissensions, and in a happy condition without any misfortunes befalling upon them till they all died. They were also the inventors of a particular sort of wisdom, which is concerned with the heavenly bodies and in their order, and that their inventions might not be lost before they were sufficiently known. Upon Adam's prediction that the world would be destroyed at one time by force of fire and another by force of violence and quantity of water, they made 2 pillars, one of brick and another of stone. They inscribed their discoveries on them, that in case the pillar of brick should be destroyed by the flood, the pillar of stone might remain and exhibit those discoveries to mankind, and also inform them that there was another pillar of brick erected by them. Now this remains in the land of Syriad to this day. That's the pillar of stone. Now, who are the descendants of Seth? Well, just let me tell you that Enoch was in that descendant line. Hold that thought. You don't have a lot of thoughts to hold here. Yes.
The board said that it covered 13 acres. What is the footage across one side and to the top?
It's 750 feet on each side and 450 feet tall.
Okay.
It's exactly 5,449 pyramid inches tall. You know what that is? Hold that thought.
Oh, my. You can't even write it down.
Dogon, the Dogon people in Sirius B. Here's another mystery that nobody's ever been able to figure out. It said that this land of Syriad was where this monument was. The land of Syriad was Egypt. And Syriad, it's called the land of Syriad because the people there worship the dog star Sirius. Now, in Mali, West Africa, there lives a tribe of people called the Dogon. The Dogon believed to be of Egyptian descent, and their astronomical lore goes back several thousand years to 3200 BC. According to their traditions, the star Sirius has a companion star which is invisible to the human eye. This companion star has a 50-year elliptical orbit around the visible star Sirius and is extremely heavy. They claim it's the heaviest thing in the universe, and it rotates on its axis. This legend might be of little interest to anybody, but the 2 French anthropologists, Marcel Guial, whatever, and Germain somebody else, who recorded it from the 4 Dogon priest, the Dogon priest, in 1930s. This was of little interest, except it is exactly true. How did a people who lacked any kind of astronomical devices know so much about an invisible star, a star which scientists call Sirius B, which wasn't even photographed except by a large telescope in 1970? Now, they predicted this star was there, and I have no way of knowing. Now, if you look up in the winter sky, and you know where Orion is, you ever see those 3 stars up there in the belt of Orion? You just point those down, and it points to Sirius, which is a star in Canis Major, which is the dog star. So that's where Sirius B is, and there's the Chandra X-ray satellite. You see that little dot up at the top? That's Sirius B. Now tell me, how in the world do people can worship a star, know its orbit that you can't see, and nobody knew was there, and worship it for thousands of years? How can you do that? Well, you can't do that unless somebody told them. Somebody told them. I wonder who that was. Now we get back to the scripture again. Isaiah 19:19 and 20 reads like this: in that day. And by the way, anytime you see that phraseology, in that day, that's the day of the Lord. In that day there will be an altar to the Lord in the midst of the land of Egypt, and a pillar to the Lord at its border. And it will be for a sign and for a witness to the Lord of hosts in the land of Egypt. We know where this thing is, whatever it is. We know where it is because it says it's in the middle of the land of Egypt and on the border. And it's called a pillar. That's a bad word. It should have been interpreted, there will be a monument. A monument tells you more than a pillar. A pillar is just a pile of rocks. But a monument, now that's something different. That implies a monument to something, implies order. So Egypt is a curious country in that Egypt is really two pieces, Upper Egypt and Lower Egypt. And you can be in the middle of the land of Egypt and on the border at the same time. And that border area is called Giza. And in the middle of Giza is a single point at the border and in the middle. And that singular point we know as the Pyramid of Giza. And whatever this thing is at the border in the center is a witness, and it says to the Lord. You can also interpret that a witness of the Lord. So this is something that is telling us that there is a monument in Egypt that witnesses the Lord. And how might it do that? Well, it's Urim Midden, revelation through measurement. This 30-word passage in Hebrew, each of the Hebrew characters has a numerical value. You add up the numerical value of that 30-word passage, it comes to 5,449. Now, the 5,449 is exactly the height up to the unfinished cap of the Great Pyramid of Giza.
Whoa, whoa, whoa. slow
Whoa, 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 whoa.
down. You are going way faster than I can think. Or you go back to the Hebrew original alphabet.
We're talking about the original text of Isaiah 19 through 20.
Okay, in the Hebrew.
In the Hebrew.
In the
Gotta
Hebrew.
use
And
Hebrew.
Each letter has
a value.
value.
It's called gematria.
Okay, okay.
And the gematria of that passage is 5,449. Now I said a pyramid inch. A pyramid inch is defined by the pyramid itself. And I'll show you eventually when we get there. If we get there today, I think we'll get there today. But as you first go up to the king's chamber, which is right
Drawing
here,
you a picture now.
Okay.
and you look on this wall right up here, you will see something that looks like this. It's a boss. It is extended out from this column right here, this facing. This distance between right here is 25 pyramid inches. And it's a royal cubit also. This is the fundamental building unit of the whole pyramid. Now that 25 pyramid inches is exactly 1/10,000th of an inch greater than a British inch, which makes you wonder, where did the British get their inch? And why are they off by 1/1000th of an inch? Well, the point is, unless you use this pyramid inch dimension, you won't be able to decode a thing out of the Great Pyramid. But if you do, using that boss in that dimension, all sorts of things begin to fall out. And the beginning of it with is the base of the Great Pyramid. It was always thought to just be a square. Until in 1930s they flew over it in a biplane and some guy looked down and said, hey, those sides, they kind of go in on there. It's hard to see from ground, but from overhead they could see. Now this is greatly exaggerated as it says. But the base isn't really a straight line like this. It concaves in and then it comes back out on all sides. Now, that's a curiosity. Why do you do that? Well, if you take A to D down here, or A to B, either one, and you look at that dimension in cubits, well, this dimension from A to D, or D to C, or C to B, is exactly 365.242 pyramid cubits. And of course, as you remember from last week, that's exactly the number of days in a solar year. Now, if you were to follow this path, following the lines in to the pyramid, and then down this vertical line, and then back out again, that's a little bit different. That dimension is 365.256 cubits, which is exactly the number of days in a sidereal year. You know what a sidereal year is, everybody? Too bad. Sidereal year, a solar year.
Literal year? Is that the
There are three types of ways of measuring a year. One is solar year. That's when you've got a shadow on a pole, and the sun goes this way and comes across the equator, comes back and makes the same shadow. That's a solar year. Now, if you were to take your telescope and point it out at a star, and then as the sun moves back, crosses the equator, and comes back until you were pointing at that star again, that is called a sidereal year.
How are you spelling that?
S-I-D-E-R-I-A-L.
Whoa, try that one more time, S-I-D-E-R.
EAL.
S-I-D-E-R-E-A-L-L. E-A-L.
That's a
Sidereal.
sidereal.
Sidereal or sidereal
Year.
year. Now there's one more way, which I don't understand, but people seem to understand it. It's called an anomalistic year. And that's the point from the time of perihelion to perihelion of the Earth's orbit around the sun. What does that mean? I don't know. Somebody tell me, but it's different. And if you follow this course right here, inside the pyramid and then back out again, that's 365.259, and that is exactly to 3 significant figures an anomalistic year. My point being, somebody went to an awful lot of trouble to encode that information. Remember, Urim revelation in measurement. This, yes,
Where's the lunar year?
there's a lunar year?
Yeah, the straight line. Isn't that what you said?
No, the solar year, a lunar year, that's 360 days. And it is different from any of these other measurements because these are all 365 days.
Got the Jewish year?
Yeah, it's called the prophetic year, but it's actually the Jewish year. Now, if you will remember way back when we did Matthew 24, the year 701 BC, all calendars in the world changed. Up to that moment in time, a year was 360 days. But from 701 forward, they all changed. They were all over the map.
It was 361 or 365?
365.
And was that because the Earth was like this?
Well, here's the theory behind it, and there are people with significant math skills that try to prove this, and that is that the planet Mars had a highly elliptical orbit, and it came in close contact with the Earth, such that the gravitational field between the two planets, there was an energy exchange. And what happened was the Earth was pushed out in its orbit, and Mars was pulled in. And so Mars' orbit now is pretty much circular, and ours is slightly elliptical, but our days changed by 15 minutes a day, roughly. And so now the Jews, in order to handle that, the Jewish year is 360 days per year, but here's the dilemma. If you don't have some mechanism of rectifying this problem, every year you're picking up 5 days that you don't know what to do with. And so the way the Jews do it is that they look at the barley harvest. And every year they go out and look at the barley harvest. Is the barley ripe? Barley's not ripe. Keep right on going. Next year, is the barley ripe? Barley's ripe. Whoops, add another month. So they add V Adar, which means an additional month Adar. So 7 times every 19 years, the Jewish calendar is revised by the addition of a month called V Adar. So that's how the Jewish people handle it. The way we handle it, leap year. We got a leap year now. Our calendar's pretty close, but it's 365.242. That's almost a quarter. Every 4 years, we have to add a leap day. Otherwise, eventually, we'll end up having Christmas in July if you're not careful. Moving right along.
What happened in 701 BC? Is that?
That's when we believe that the planet Mars came in close contact with the Earth, up to about 20,000 miles inside the diameter of the moon. And it dramatically affected our orbit. And have you ever wondered how come a witch is always seen as riding a broom? You've always wondered that. Well, keep on wondering. No, Emmanuel Velikovsky says in his book, Worlds in Collision, that was probably caused by either the planet Venus or the planet Mars coming in close contact with the Earth, and it had a tail on it. And it was a bad omen, and it scared the bejabbers out of everybody. And there's another thing. Gulliver's Travels mentions that Mars has 2 moons. but you can't see them. How did they know Mars had 2 moons? Somebody in antiquity saw Mars right up close and personal. They saw those 2 moons, and it's back in our DNA somewhere. So we knew that Mars had 2 moons. The question is, how did they know it? Probably because it came really close to the Earth at one time and scared the bejeebers out of everybody. Now, here's an angle, and this may sound not too significant, but ponder it. Here's the horizontal line going right through Giza. And if you take a run line, aim it right out here at Bethlehem, you're going to get an angle. That angle is 26 degrees, 18 minutes, 9.7 seconds. Hold that thought.
I have to make a list.
Now, this is the standard picture you're going to see of the Great Pyramid, wherever you see it. It has on its northern face a descending passageway. It goes way under the pyramid into a place down here, which is bizarre. It looks like Hades. I mean, it's a mess. Nobody's figured out what that's for. And then as you go down in here a certain distance, you will find an ascending passageway. The only problem is the ascending passageway is blocked by granite plugs. You can't get around it. Now, back in 820 AD, a caliph by the name of Al-Mamun heard about the Great Pyramid, and he decided he was going to go there and raid it, because there's bound to be a bunch of gold in there. Anybody can build anything like that, man, there's got to be gold in there. And Herodotus reported, and others, that there is on the north face a stone that if you push it, it'll roll up, and there's an entranceway in there. And so they went up there, and they got on the center line of the north face. They went up there and started beating the crap out of the pyramid. They just knocked stones out all over the place, made a big mess out of it. They never could find the entranceway because they were on the center line. And so one day they were about to give up when suddenly off to the side, somebody heard a stone fall off to the left. So they moved over to the left and dug around, and lo and behold, they found the descending passageway after they tore up half of the face of the pyramid. So they accessed it and went in, and that's when they found the granite plug, and they said, well, the treasure must be up there. So they dug around the granite plug, they went into this small passageway, it's about 4 foot, and went up until, boom, right here, the passageway extended up. Now, on that face, when they found that doorway, it wasn't on the center line. It was offset 286.1 pyramid inches. So, pull that number. We went down, we came back up here, this passageway breaks out 286.1 pyramid inches. And this hall right here, they called it the Hall of Truth and Light. They call this one the Hall of Truth and Darkness. And then you come up here, there is a lateral that comes off of here over to a chamber, which they call the Queen's Chamber. And then you go way up this Hall of Truth and Light to a big step, and then you enter into what's called the King's Chamber. The King's Chamber is separated by an antechamber and then a King's Chamber. And in the King's Chamber, there's only one movable rock in the whole Great Pyramid, and that's a rock that sits right in there. It sets back, offset from the center line, 286.1 pyramid inches, such that that coffer is dead on the center line of the capstone of the pyramid. Interesting number, 286. They call that the rectification number. So now, it gets even more interesting, because as time went on, in the 1800s, English and Scottish astronomers, hearing about the Great Pyramid, were determined to go there and prove what they've heard to be wrong. That is the motivation by almost every one of them. Now, there's 2 guys, one named Sir John Herschel and another one called Charles Piazzi Smythe. Charles Piazzi Smythe, I mentioned last time, was an astronomer emeritus of I believe it was the Glasgow Observatory in Scotland. And he went there, and he began to walk down this descending passageway. Man, he's an astronomer, you know. And so as he's going down there, and there's trouble everywhere, and he looks back over, and he looks, and because that this passageway portends such a very small amount of space, you could actually see the North Star during the day because all of the other light was filtered out. Until you get down to about right here, and then all of a sudden you couldn't see the North Star anymore. And he says to himself, there's something interesting here. Was there ever a time when you could stand clear down here in this chamber and see the North Star? And because he was an astronomer, he could figure that out. And there was a time, because, the Earth rotates on its axis, one rotation every roughly 25,000 years, he knew that the Polaris, which is our North Star now, it wasn't a North Star in antiquity. In fact, Thuban in Draconis was the North Star way back in the year 2141 BC. And as it turns out, only one day during the whole year of antiquity could you stand in the bottom, look up, and see the North Star. And that was March 21st, 2141 BC. Now, at that time, right overhead, the apex of the pyramid was pointing to a star, Alcyone in the Pleiades. Now, Draconis, that's the dragon star, right? Thuban means subtle.
Means what?
Subtle. S-U-B-L-E, subtle. S-U-B-T-L-E. What she said. It means subtle. And so everyone on this descending passageway called this the descent of man under the influence of Draconis, the dragon, Satan. And when you saw this ascending passageway blocked by the granite, they said that was the ascent of man. Now, it's kind of interesting because 820 pyramid inches into the pyramid, you will find from V-notches. This is Adam Rutherford examining the V-notches. It makes a very fine line, floor to ceiling. No explanation, just a fine line. Now, having that information, Charles Piazzi Smythe, and knowing the dimensions of the pyramid and how it was constructed and the fundamental unit, he made a guess. He said, that V-scored line, they're trying to tell us something here. And by knowing when the pole star came into contact, when you could see it at the bottom of the descending passageway, that date, March 21st, 2141 CC, I'm going to assume that date was the date of that V-notch line. And
Of what?
that's the date, reference date, I'm going to begin with. I'm going to start with V-notch line 2141 BC. And then I'm going to measure, just on a whim, 1 pyramid inch to a year on the descending passageway. And just, I don't know why he did this. I'm sure he was under the influence of somebody. But when you get from the V-notches right here to the ascending passageway, and let me tell you, the guy took a wire to measure this with that was thermally compensated, which means it was about as accurate to within a 10,000th of an inch. So he measured this very, very carefully. And he found that there is a particular date right here. And that date is 1453 BC. And he scratched his head and he scratched his head. And, well, at the time he didn't know what that meant. But he said, well, it's 1453. I wonder if we took an inch to a year and move up here and find out where this breakout is. What year would we come to there? Well, he went there, and guess where that occurs? This is what we call the Christ Triangle. By the way, 1453 is the best date we know of the children of Israel leaving Egyptian captivity. When we get up to that breakout point right here, where the elevation expands by 286.1 pyramid inches, and if you, I'm going to have to draw another picture here because you'll miss it if I don't. As we're going up in the breakout, it's bound to be something that works here. Yeah, there we go. As you come up and the breakout goes, it goes like this. It doesn't go straight up, but it doesn't parallel the wall until here. This breakout right here, where the breakout begins, Rosh Hashanah 2 BC.
Oh, wow.
This is Rosh Hashanah. Anybody know what that means? That's the birthday of Christ. Now, you go on up here from that date at the Christ angle of 26 degrees, 18 minutes, 9.7 seconds, and you draw a rung line down up here and see where it intersects the floor. It intersects the floor at 3 April, AD 33. Anybody know what that is? That's Christ's death. This is called the Christ angle. If you draw a line like a compass from here to there, you intersect another date, which is 14 October 29 AD, and that's where we believe Christ was baptized. So 29 September 2 BC is where the Great Pyramid says that Christ was born, and 3 April 33 AD, which would have been Passover, was where he was crucified. Now that's called the Christ triangle.
Okay, now, so I understand this. It's hard to keep up with it. You are talking about the notches going, you go so far into the descending,
Ascending. Yeah, there's a V notch on the descending passageway.
and you find these notches, and you from the outside to the inside, and then one more down.
We're
That's
going
what
from
you
the
were
V
first
notch
talking
down.
about. Okay, and then now we're going back up.
We're going up. We're bypassing the granite plugs. There had to be a miracle. The miracle was the Egyptians, the Israelites left Egyptian captivity.
Right.
Those granite plugs were there for a reason. It took a miracle to get around them. And so once we're beyond the granite plugs, now we go on up until the breakout point in the Hall in Truth and Light, where it breaks out, 286.1 pyramid inches. Now, you can go and continue this on up to the great step that goes into the king's chamber.
Oh, wow.
Now, when you get up to this great step right here, it's the beginning of World War I. Now here is where it all gets very interesting, because as you go horizontally, a year to an inch doesn't get you anything. Now, if you go a year to a month, you begin to get interesting things from the inside the
A month
kingdom.
to an inch?
Huh?
A month to an inch?
A month to an inch. You begin to get interesting things. Nobody has been able to decipher it completely inside the king's chamber. But that empty coffer that's in there, it's not a coffin at all. It's an empty coffer. And in my way of thinking, it's a symbol of the empty tomb. And where it's located, like I said, 286.1 pyramid inches offset of the center line. So now we have the rectification has occurred. Now, Rosh Hashanah 2017 has an interesting event that occurs. The Christ angle, if you extend that line out on the ascending passageway on Rosh Hashanah, there is an alignment between Regulus and Venus. Remember, Venus is the morning star. Regulus is the king star. The day before Rosh Hashanah, there's an alignment. On Rosh Hashanah itself, if you go down below the horizon, on the Christ angle, you will hit Jupiter. Jupiter is the king planet. Something interesting is going on, according to the Great Pyramid, on Rosh Hashanah 2017. Here you can see a little more information. And when that event occurs, Al-Niktak, which is a star in the belt of Orion, is at what they call meridian. It is right over the capstone of the Great Pyramid. Now, How much time have I
10 minutes to
got? Okay.
5, really.
Regulus is in Leo the lion. Oh, Alnatak is in the belt of Orion. I'm sorry. Leo the lion, yeah, Orion, the coming prince. Now, it gets interesting. Some time ago, a astronomer named Robert Bauval was sitting out in the desert in Egypt. He was studying the Great Pyramids, and looking up into the night sky, he was looking right at the belt of Orion. And he looks at it, and he looks at it, and if you've ever seen the belt of Orion, you've got 2 stars, and then a 3rd star that's offset off the center line of the other 2. And then he began to think about the Great Pyramid. And it dawned on him that those Great Pyramids are just a symbol of those belt stars in Orion. And if you look at Orion, that's the astronomical sign of what it looks like in the sky. A lot of interesting stars there in the belt of Orion. But remember, I didn't go through, when we went through the Gospel in the Stars, I didn't go through all the signs with you. What we're going to do at the sign of Taurus the bull, because Orion is one of the decans of Taurus the bull. Orion in the Dendera zodiac, the hieroglyphic characters read O-A-R. The ancient spelling of Orion was O-A-R-O-I-O-N, coming from the Hebrew root which means light. The Akkadian name for Orion was Ur-Ana, which means the light of heaven. Al-Natak, which is one of the 3 belt stars of Orion, means the wounded one. One of the stars in his leg is called Sayaf, which means the bruised. The other stars in Arabic are Al-Gayazud, which means the branch, Al-Gibor, the mighty, Al-Mizraim, which means the ruler, and Al-Nagjed, which means the prince. The brightest star in the shoulder, called Betelgeuse, which means the coming. And the star in his left foot is called Regal, which means the foot that crushes. All of these signs are the sign of the Messiah. He is the light of the world. Remember, this pyramid, I told you earlier, it's the light. It was called the light of the world. It was called the golden light. It was the light and Orion and the Great Pyramid are all tied together. And what we're seeing here in Orion, in my estimation, is a sign of the coming of the Messiah with his foot raised and about to stomp on the head of the dragon. Revelation 21, remember, and he carried me away in the Spirit to a great and high mountain and showed me the great city, the New Jerusalem, descending from God out of heaven, having the glory of God, and her light was like a most precious stone, like jasper, clear as crystal. We got a sign and a symbol of the New Jerusalem here in this great pyramid. The city had no need of sun nor moon nor light to shine on it, for the glory of God illumined it, and the nations of those who are saved shall walk in its light, and the kings of the earth shall bring their glory and honor into it. This great pyramid is a pyramid of light, which is a shadow and a type of the New Jerusalem in my humble estimation. Taurus, the coming and ruling. The Orion is one of the decans of the constellation Taurus. Taurus, the coming and ruling, the brightest star is Aldebaran, which means leader or governor. The star in the left horn is called El-Nath, which means the wounded. We're in all the symbols here of the Messiah. He was wounded. He's certainly going to be the leader. The cluster of stars in Taurus is called the Pleiades, meaning the congregation of the judge or ruler. That's probably a symbol of us. One of these stars called Alcyone, meaning the center, and that center was that star, which in 2141, which was directly over the Great Pyramid, when the pole star Thuban in Draconis could be seen at the bottom of the pyramid's descending passageway. The Syriac name of the Pleiades is Sukkoth, which means booths. This is the name of the last Jewish holy day, which is associated with the millennial reign. What we have here is a tie-in to the millennium. And it's all pointing up to the stars in Orion and in the constellation Taurus. Now, if I were to give this lesson on a Sunday morning, how long do you think I would get before they held me, called for the little men in white coats? There is another. There is a river running out of the foot of Orion. That river is called Eridanus, the river of the judge. And I beheld till thrones were cast down, and the Ancient of Days did sit, whose garments were white as snow, and the hair of his head was pure wool. His throne was like a fiery flame, and his wheels were burning fire, and a fiery stream issued and came down from before him. Thousands of thousands ministered unto him, and 10,000 times 10,000 stood before him, and judgment was set, and the books were opened. Eridanus is, in my view, a symbol of the wrath of God being poured out. The final decan of Taurus is called Aruga, the Great Shepherd, in which the Great Shepherd has taken possession of the Lamb and is holding and protecting him. The end.
Wow. Wow. Okay, where did we get all of the definitions of what these stars are?
That's a good question. If you will purchase the book called The Witness in the Stars by Ethelbert W. Bullinger, in the prefix to that, you will find a woman from Kinswick, England, spent her life assembling information on the most ancient star signs that she could find from the nations of Arabia, Egypt, Hebrew, and Persian. These names of those stars are back there in antiquity. But nobody ever bothered to put them all together. She put them all together. And then Ethelbert W. Bullinger, who did the first work on this, began to look at those stars and said, this is the gospel in the stars. And sure enough, if you look at them, the signs begin with the sign of Virgo, which is a virgin. And the first decan is the virgin with a child. His name in Greek is Christos, the Messiah. And it goes on from there. And you find the whole story starting with the virgin birth, ending with Leo the lion in the tribe of Judah. By the way, Regulus is a star in Leo the lion of the tribe of Judah, who will come and rule and reign. And so it's all tied together. Yes?
One more thing, it's very interesting when you're talking about those notches in the pyramid, because the archaeologists have found notches in the tunnels underneath the temple in Jerusalem, and they don't know what they're for.
Ooh, isn't that
You're
interesting?
gonna show us all that, aren't you?
Well, no, not Jerusalem.
You want us to send you over there and check them out?
Let's all
I'm
go.
gonna have a bucket for money, you guys send them over there.
Well, as you can tell, this is material that you're not going to find just anywhere, and it's been a fascination of mine. I'm always fascinated to find people that are even willing to listen to the story. And so thank you for your kind attention. Yes?
Aren't you really kind of saying that the pyramid was built by the ancient Egyptians, but they were inspired to do so by God himself?
Here's what I'm saying, and I forgot to finish the story. There is a antechamber in the king's chamber, and if you put a circle in there that touched all four walls, that circle would have a dimension of 365.242, which is exactly the number of years Enoch lived.
Wow.
The ancient Egyptians claimed that Enoch was the builder of the Great Pyramid. For God took him and he was not. Well, where did he take him? There are those that believe he took Enoch to Egypt, and with the help of the Watchers, they built this pyramid. There is no way that ancients with stone tools and copper made the pyramid. I don't care. I can, for example, if I gave you a nuclear submarine and gave it back to the people in the 1800s and say, here's your nuclear submarine, make me a copy of that. How long do you think it would take for them to make me? They couldn't do it. It can't be done. Same way with the Great Pyramid. Somebody put that thing back there in antiquity for a reason, And they made it with so many, I just barely touched the surface of everything that's encoded in that thing.
So the pyramids, now Enoch lived before the Great Flood, didn't he? Or
He
not?
did.
So
And
this
when
was
he
one
died-
of those pillars that, according to Josephus, survived the flood.
Survived the flood, according to Josephus.
And all that time from Adam and Eve till Noah was it 5 generations? But
From
generations
Seth
of-
to Noah was 7 generations.
7 generations. So
that
all
number
that
again.
time, Adam, we don't know how long they lived before they sinned, Adam and Eve. So Adam could have had.
The Jewish tradition is almost immediately.
Oh, well, probably. On the other hand, they were still so highly intelligent. They were made in the image of God.
And that's what Josephus records, that the descendants of Seth knew all of this stuff.
Yeah.
And somehow they, under the inspiration of God, through Enoch or the Watchers or somebody, put it all down so that succeeding generations would know that, hey, in my view, that God was there from the beginning. And that his holy city was a part of the original design. It's a city of light. It's emphasized by the light of Orion. It shows that God put the stars there also. This whole thing is one big integrated system. It's not just the Bible that declares the glory of God. It's the stars themselves. It's this monument which nobody can explain in the plain of Giza.
The heavens declare the glory of
The
God.
heavens declare the glory of God, and so does the planet, yes.
Okay, just a couple of quick announcements before everyone gets away. It is 12. There